So I'm Goldenboy, and I'm a RIAA Platinum producer. Produced for artists like Chris Brown and Tracy T. I've also gotten some sync placements and with like iHeartRadio and a few other opportunities there. But yeah, no, I've been making music for almost like I'm 31 now, since I was like 17. So yeah, I've just been grinding away, just creating. Been fortunate enough to move out to LA and to really pursue my passion, like full time. And, I haven't looked back since, so just continuing the ride and enjoying the journey, so life's good, man.
That's awesome, man. I love that. Yeah, for those of you that are tuning in, I met Golden Boy in LA, which I honestly wish I would have like connected with you deeper sooner, because that was a really good experience for me, the whole LA experience in general, and then just meeting different people. Like, one of the things I really appreciate about you, and it kind of speaks to your experience, is you know how to draw a really good balance. And I think I wish I was in the studio with you a little more, but you seem to know how to draw a really good balance between like, let's get this work in, let's go, and also just like a kind of relaxed studio vibe too. Like, there's not a ton of pressure, I don't think, with people working with you. There's like it's a very nice balance. And I feel like that's something you can only really fully like get from experience, unless maybe you've always had that. But yeah, do you think that's like a conscious thing? Has that ever been a conscious thing, or it's just who you are? It's always kind of been like that.
No, that's a great observation. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think it's a combination of both, right? Kind of like my personality is very like laid back already, is very kind of like easygoing. And then, coupled with the music industry and the creative environment, it's important to foster and cultivate like just like a comfortable, area for artists to thrive in, right? Artists aren't, I've noticed aren't artists aren't particularly keen to like the pressure, right? The pressure of creating, the pressure of like, this has got to be fire. I got to make a hit. Nah, like, we got to get to know each other. If this is our first time cooking up, got to get to know each other a little bit. I want to hear some of your stuff, what you've been cooking up, and vice versa, right? Just we can get like the energy right and kind of get a feel for our sound. So yeah, I just like to foster and cultivate like a, excuse me, an area of comfortability and just like no pressure vibes, because that's really how the best music is going to come out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very, very true. And I think that's definitely something that I myself have, I don't want to say struggled with, but I've had a few sessions where in hindsight, I look back, and this was when I first started really getting artists in the studio and working with them.
Mm.
Like, I would have an idea in my head of how this session could or should go.
Sure.
And even if the artist is not as experienced and they are looking to me for guidance, there is still a level of responsibility you have to kind of figure out where their head's at and work with both,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so on that, like, one of the people you work with is AQ. And that's someone I also met in LA. He was generous enough to let me stay at his place for a big portion of the time that I was there.
Dope.
He is a really hard worker. He is someone that right now, we were just talking right before we started recording, is that he's taking this like weekly drop approach at this moment. Mm-hmm. And even when he wasn't necessarily dropping weekly, the guy was putting in work. There was always some consistent content. Even when I was in LA, he would he had a consistent schedule or studio. Like, he would always be getting in the studio. He would always be doing something to elevate or progress his craft. When you're working with a guy like that, you just mentioned that the best music does come out when there is like that relaxed, calm sort of vibe. Explain to me how those types of studio sessions go. Like, are there moments where it is more turned on, you guys are just locked in, focused, versus more of a downtime? Do you have a lot of dips, and are there like maybe creative blocks that you guys hit? Because I see the output and it's incredible, but I wonder about those potential blocks that you guys might face and what you do about them if they do arise.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I think as creators, we all kind of experience those blockages, those hurdles, right? So, but it's just important to, like I said, just remember, we're creating for fun, right? Like, not obviously we want to make a career out of it, right? But like ultimately there's a passion, and we truly enjoy creating it, and it is fun, intrinsically speaking. But yes, no, we do, face blockages, like everybody else. It's just, feeling the vibe, especially if we are making a track like from scratch, and we're already feeling the vibe, and he's just going off, voice notes are going crazy. He's just kind of flowing, right? He's in like a flow state. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie Soul, the Pixar movie, but it's like, when you're locked in and you're just in that flow state, time just stands still, and you just like, before you know it, the song is written. You know what I mean? But on the opposite side of the spectrum, we can see those stoppages and those like halts, just, because we're so particular on not just the production side, because I'm very methodical and about my beats. I kind of take a while, just personally, my process is I take a good amount of time, just because I want the bounce to be right. I want the feeling to just like be correct for AQ to deliver a message that's just like impactful. You know what I mean? And so on the writing side, yeah, Q is so also methodical about writing his lyrics, his punchlines, his bars, his flows, the cadences. Like, he's very, very particular about how he delivers his messages. So, after we'll cut the first ref or the second ref, he'll kind of go back and assess and analyze, like, oh no, this bar could be stronger. Like, oh no, I should rewrite this, or like kind of approach it, with a different, kind of a different attitude, like maybe less energy or more energy. Like, so he's very particular and very methodical about how he approaches each bar, each word, each line. And that's inspirational in itself, because then it just kind of like puts it back onto me, like, okay, yeah, I need to make sure I'm like giving him the right balance in the production side so that he can execute how he wants. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Right.
that really helps, like the blockages, and like, just it's just like an all-encompassing thing.
Right. And that is something I noticed too with him is and artists like him. I mean, like, again, I've worked with a lot of artists that are newer to just even making music and releasing music. So I do have to play a role of really helping them, sometimes really helping them and guiding them in a very strong way. But I remember, again, when I was in LA, it was like one of the sessions we had, and Q was there, and he heard one of the beats we were making, and he would, he just started writing something on his phone, and his timing of when he was ready to hop on was such a smooth, like, I don't even know how to explain it, but it worked perfectly with the timing of what I was producing at that time. And it just helped the session flow perfectly well. It wasn't too much pressure. It wasn't too late for him to hop. It was a perfect time. I'm curious about, one of the things you just mentioned is that you do like to take your time, and you are methodical about your production. That is something I'm super interested in, because I do see, like, I've been in sessions where the producers may be taking way too long, and then the artist's like vibe is kind of he's not as, they're not vibing as much as they were to the beat.
Sure.
And so I guess on that, like, is there a difference when you're in the studio with an artist versus when you're just cooking up alone, with the amount of time you might take? Or is it actually, now you're at a point where it is actually quite similar and you're able to time it well? You can get these things done in a time that you're comfortable with.
Sure. Yeah. I think obviously, like, if you have a rapport with the artist, right? And like AQ and I have been cooking up for like the past couple of years, and I've been pulling up on him. So we have developed kind of, a dynamic between us, where I'm able to like spend, I'll spend like an hour and a half or something on a beat, make sure the bounce is right. And then I'll send it right to him. He'll cut it in Logic, and you know what I mean? We'll get the ideas going that way. As for like cooking up on my own, I probably take longer than I would take if I would cook up with AQ, right? It's all about your rapport with the artist. So like if I'm in a session and, with the new artist that I haven't cooked up with at all, so I don't know his personality, I don't know his temperament, this and that,
Right.
then, I'll be quicker about it. I'll get the idea, lay the foundation out, especially if they're vibing with it. then I'll be more inclined to do the post-production side of it and then send them back like a full, beat. So
Right.
that's really how I'll work with like the newer artists that I'll work with. But the more established guys that I have a rapport with, like I'll take my time because they know they trust the sound, thankfully. And like,
Right.
we've been able to, at least have a couple songs and ideas or our sound together as an artist and a producer kind of like is unique in itself. So they're more inclined to want to make more of that vibe. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes total sense. Um, and when did you say you started producing?
I started producing when I was like 17, but I
Yeah.
really took it more seriously like the last 7 years, 6, 7, 8 years, something like that.
Right.
So I
And what?
moved back. I'm sorry. What were you saying?
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say I moved. So I went to college out here. I went to Loyola. Graduated in 2013. I was always making beats in college. After I graduated, I moved back east. So I worked in New York for like a year doing digital marketing stuff, but I was still making beats. I entered this. I don't know if you remember iStandard, like back years ago. iStandard.
Ooh, I'm not sure.
They
I'm
did
not sure.
like these beat competitions across the country. It was like Battle
Okay.
of the Beat Makers
Oh
in
yeah,
Toronto.
yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Very similar, but they did it in the US and it was like
Right.
across the country. So, fortunately, I was able to submit and they accepted me as a part of the competition. And I ended up winning that, the New York version, right? So that just gave me the courage to move out to LA and really like pursue my dreams and, go after it. So,
Wow.
yeah. So I've been making music for a while now. It's just I think I moved back out to LA 2014, 15. So since then, I've like really been taking it seriously. And I got my first placement at the Chris Brown joint in 2016.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you first started, what did that look like? Like what DAW were you using? What kind of, things were you making? How did that even come about?
Yeah. I started on Ableton actually. And I
Mm,
started on Ableton 8. And I was just, learning any way I could, taking YouTube tutorials, taking actual like DJ classes to learn, excuse me, excuse me, learning DJ just skills, you know what I mean? Because Ableton was very friendly towards the DJ community, and I wanted to be hip with that,
right.
with that DAW. It wasn't until later I started getting exposed to FL Studio. I had a lot of collaborations with a ton of FL Studio users, so it just made
Mm,
collaborating with them way simpler on that DAW. So I
right.
actually moved over completely from Ableton. But basically, whatever I did, I learned in Ableton, I applied to FL. So the way I chop samples, the way I kind of like arrange my beats, or you know what I mean, the sounds that I use, I've obviously tailored it to the FL life. But
Right.
it's been super beneficial just learning different DAWs. Like I've even learned Pro Tools now. Like I can record in Pro
Mm,
Tools. So learning just different DAWs, different softwares just gives you another insight into creating music in itself. They all do the same thing. It's just like how you use it. You know what I mean? How
for
you use it.
sure.
So
Yeah, no, that's very true. And this beat battle that you won, because you said you won it and then you ended up moving to LA.
yeah.
Um, was that like did that kind of push your confidence over the edge or give you that like, okay, I can actually do this type thing? Or were you already kind of thinking of moving to LA, and it just happened to be that around that time?
Yeah, I always knew I wanted to move back to LA. It was just, everything's about timing, right?
Mm,
But I wanted, and it definitely gave me the boost I needed to like really go after it because, I would have probably ended up coming out here, but that experience definitely like pushed me over the edge because at the time I wasn't playing my music for anybody other than my parents and my
mm,
friends. So I didn't really have real world feedback from like industry professionals, you know what I mean? Or just people
right.
that were like had that exposure to the industry. I just needed, that I really needed that boost. And, I'm thankful for the opportunity and for having won it. And, it really gave me the drive to up my sound, up my game.
Right.
I just really wanted to get my music in front of these like professional producers, right? Just to get an idea if I'm headed in the right direction, like if I'm using the sounds correctly, and
Right.
even picking cool sounds in the first place, right? I was just picking what I thought sounded cool. So I think in the long haul, that's what ended up getting me to win, right? Just kind of like my
Right.
mindset and just going with my feelings and what I liked rather than what I thought people would like. So that's
And did you, yeah, I mean, sorry, go ahead. What were you
no,
saying?
I was saying that's kind of like how my mind was like going into it. I didn't expect to win. I wanted to get feedback, and B, I wanted to get
Mm,
inspired from the other producers that were going up to play their beats, because I know they were coming with some heat too.
right, right. And who did you say the judges were?
There were 2 nights. So the first night, it was like this guy Amadeus from Platinum Boy Music, and then I think it was Pete Rock, and then the second night
Mm,
it was Illmind, and then it was another judge. I can't recall.
dope,
Um,
dope.
but yeah, it was crazy. It was awesome.
Yeah. And did you have to arrange your beat in any particular way, like for that time slot that you would be allotted, or did you like was arrangement you kind of had to pay attention to there?
At the time, I didn't know that there was like a certain arrangement. They were just like you have a minute, to play beats. You're gonna have,
Right.
make sure you bring like. So there's 2 nights, right? So I probably put together like 12 beats, right? Like 6 a night. And then
Mm,
for all the beats, I just cut it down to a minute. But it wasn't until I had actually seen Battle of the Beat Makers that I knew like uh, beats for battles are different for beats for placement. So
yeah.
like
Yeah.
when you're creating like beats for battles, like there's so many drops, there's like, a lot of beat stutters and like, vocal chops. So I was just making beats, and then I was just like cutting it down like for a minute.
Mm,
I think
right.
if I were to ever like do a beat battle again, I would definitely arrange it like more for a battle than I would just like. Honestly thought it was like a showcase vibe, so I didn't really
Yeah,
expect it
yeah.
as like a battle.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was dope.
Cool. Yeah. So, and also I this is kind of a side thing. I'm curious, like where that digital marketing that you did you enjoy being in that field? Was that something that you found enjoyable, or was that more of like oh, it's okay, but you know,
Yeah,
this is where my true, yeah.
yeah. I mean, I always knew like my true passion was in music, um, but it was definitely a great experience. Going corporate and learning marketing, because that's what my degree is in marketing. But
I see.
yeah, it was a great experience. Like I didn't really have any experience with like sales, so a lot of it was learning and developing those sales skills, like cold calling and really developing
Right.
like plans, like media scheduled plans. Um, for different clientele, focusing on like email marketing and SEO and social media optimization, all that stuff. So it was definitely
Mm-hmm.
eye opening for me, and I was able to even like translate it to the music a little bit with social media marketing. So definitely learned a lot.
Cool. Yeah, that's what I was curious about too. Is if you found that it potentially at all helped with your music side of things, but it sounds like it probably did.
Yeah, yeah, I was able to really. I mean, Instagram, Twitter, those are like the top 2 platforms I've like used to network with like pretty much damn near everybody in the industry. Or at least
Yeah.
everybody that I've met has been through either Instagram or Twitter or like sessions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's yeah, that job really helped me, kind of like expand my horizons, in terms of like getting out there, even like the interpersonal, you know what I mean, just like cold calling random people like at another job, you know what I mean, like that really
Mm-hmm.
exposed me and built my confidence up to really have conversations where there might not be like a conversation to be had, you know what I mean, you just kind of got to create it. So
Right. Yeah. Um, so now take me through kind of, okay, you moved to LA. What happens then? Like what did you already have like a solid network there, or was that more of something you had to work to build?
yeah, I definitely had to work to build it. When I first moved to LA, I was at the time a part of another production team, based out of New York, and we were, just cooking up while I was still over there. And then, I let them know that I'm moving out to LA. They introduced me to a few people, And then, yeah, that's just kind of how I got my legs out, growing in LA is it was through that. And fortunately enough, I was able to connect with them and just build the network from there, just kind of expand from that experience. And yeah, just keep grinding.
For sure. And how did your Chris Brown placement come about? You knew I was going to ask about it, so I'm just curious as to what went into it and how that came about.
Yeah. So actually, the story I was just telling you. So I was a part of the music production team in New York called the Amazons with this producer Lee on the beats, and he produced like Hold You Down and Pop That, and
wow,
he was like DJ Khaled's like guy.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So I was part of his team, and then I told him I was moving out here, and they had linked me with this guy LDB, and he actually produced with Lee and a few other guys on Hold You Down. Khaled, Chris Brown, August, Jeremiah, everybody,
Yeah.
Right? So he's going crazy. So I linked with LDB out here, and he introduced me to another guy, DJ West, and a couple other guys like Dave and Dre and Case Mac, and we all, we were all cooking up, and we were just vibing, right? And at the end of the session, he was like, "Yo," DJ West was like, "Yo, I'm gonna send this out to a couple camps." I know he had sent it out to YG's camp, and I guess he had sent it out to Chris's camp, and then I got a call saying Chris loved the record. Goldie cut it. This is writer Goldie. She like writes for a ton of people. She's like a huge hit maker. So she cut the demo for Picture Me Rollin', and then Chris loved it and he cut it.
Wow.
They put a video out for it, and it was like A$AP Rocky's in it, A$AP Ferg,
that's crazy.
Scott Disick. It was like crazy people in the video. So it was an awesome experience, awesome high. So just chasing that next one, you know what I mean? Just going to the next one.
Sure.
I'm grinding, keeping my head down, like I haven't even gotten that placement. So
yeah, I respect that. Yeah, that's tough for a lot of people. Like even with like a little win, sometimes people can get very complacent.
For sure. Yeah.
So
you're only as good as your last win, right? So that's whatever. That's what I keep telling myself, right? Which is obviously not the case, but like, people have a short memory. So that's
that's right. So. Yeah, I've heard that a lot, man. Like with producers that I look up to and that are, successful in however you want to define it, but they're successful in my terms. One of the things that I've heard fairly consistently that's come up is like that idea of you're only good as your last win, or even I've heard like this. I don't know how they've worded it, but essentially this idea of like every day that you started, like every day's a new day. And so everything that's, happened even in yesterday or the past week or the past month or whatever, like good and bad, just clean slate, start now. Like, right. I think that's a very interesting mindset to have, especially in a profession like this. Talk to me about melodies and drums. Like some people are very all they're using right now is just loops. They're putting drums over them, and there's nothing wrong. I have nothing wrong with that. Are you someone that keeps your melodic skills intact? Do you practice making your own melodies a lot, or are you mainly a loop guy right now? What does that look like for you?
I honestly, it's funny you say that, because about 2 years ago, like I started getting hit up for like samples. So I've always been like a drum guy. Like, actually I've really kind of been on both sides of the field. So when I first moved to LA, I was working with this producer, and he was like the drum guy. He was the drum guy. So like, I was kind of like, not forced, but like I wanted to make myself a part of the process. So I forced myself to learn how to make melodies, or at least flip samples. I'm not classically trained on the keys or anything like that. Although I work with like very talented musicians and keys guys, like I myself am looking to build the melodic skill set. You know what I mean? I got the drums. I've been doing drums for a minute now. But yeah, so more recently, a couple years ago, people kept asking me for loops or samples and stuff. I was like, yeah, I got some. Like I would send like the ideas that I had or whatever. But it wasn't until I decided to like, I think top of 2021, I really was like, okay, like I'm going to sit down every month. I'm going to pump out at least 10 to 12 samples, right? And just send them out to the people that I know. And then, they send stuff back. Awesome. If they don't, just keep working, right? I started
Right.
doing that, and I started getting crazy flips back with my samples and the vibe. So that in
Right.
itself gave me the confidence to like, okay, like I kind of have my own sound. I'm developing my own sound on the melody
Mm.
side. Let me just kind of like see where that goes and expand on that. And like I've been doing it for a couple of years now, and like I've been just getting back crazy flips from these producers, and I don't regret it at all, because all that whole time I've also been like doing the drums and stuff, and like I've been even incorporating drums in the samples as like more of a texture feel, so I can still scratch that itch as well.
Right.
So yeah, it's just getting creative with it, and like I've also learned to like divvy up like my weeks, between beats and samples. So some days I'll focus on beats, some days I'll set out. Yesterday I told myself like I wanted to make, a couple beats, a couple samples. I ended up like creating two great beat ideas and then an awesome sample idea. So like, what I mean? I'll divvy up my week according to how I'm feeling, because like, if you doing drums all day for like 7 days a week, you're gonna burn yourself out. You're gonna get tired. You're gonna get bored, frankly. So it's
Yeah.
it's easy to just kind of like die. Your passion just kind of like goes down, right? You got to refuel the passion meter. So I feel the
Right.
best way to do that is to switch between creating drum bounces and creating melodies. So, and then I also
Right.
incorporate, my method for creating drums within the melodies. I like to create the bounce, the feeling, the rhythm of the melody has to
Hmm.
gravitate to me, because I'm making it, right. Um,
Right.
so that's kind of how I approach it. So I very similar methods of to the madness.
For sure. Yeah, and that divvying up idea that you're bringing up, how it kind of gets me thinking of like organization. Like I know people, there's two types of people. Some people are ultra organized,
Mhm.
some people are really not, or especially in the creative fields. I find like it's just their brains work a certain way, so the organizing or like planning or scheduling isn't really something they do much of. It's just like all in their head and they just kind of free flow, and it works for some people.
Yeah.
What kind of, are you someone that schedules a lot? Because I find that, especially being in LA, even when I was in there for that short amount of time, I would think you would have to have some form of a schedule or organization to maximize the opportunities that you're being presented with.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. I've the calendar app in my iPhone is like my best friend, dude. I'm like filling it up. Like every time I lock
Yeah.
in a session, you got to put it in the calendar. So like I know, because things move fast, right? When you come to LA, everybody says it moves fast, which is true. So it's like, you got to stay on
Hmm.
top of it. It's easy to lose track of time, and like, just kind of get caught up with whatever if you're in a session. So yeah, it's important to get the alerts, set the alerts on for the day before, 2 days before, so you are ready for, the next couple days, and like, just, you're organized in that regard.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm curious. This is a question that I haven't asked much on the podcast, but I do want to start asking it more.
Sure.
I think it's interesting. Like, do you have, and I'm sure you do. I don't want to even, well, I'll see what you answer. Do you have times where you're maybe you walk into a session or you have something scheduled and you go to it, but you're like, man, I'm really not, even before you go to it, you might be going, oh, like I'm not feeling it today, or that type of thing.
Mm-mm.
Um, does that happen to you, or is it really not something that comes up? And if it does happen, how do you view it? Do you do anything about it, or do you just kind of wait it out?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, everybody gets into those moods, you know what I mean? It's
Mm.
raining out, or, I'm not really feeling it. So yeah, totally. I think, when it comes to that, I, I go into it thinking like, okay, I'm here to create the best music possible. So I'm really focusing on more the music than I am how I'm feeling in that moment. You know what I mean? Like I don't
Mm.
want to be there, because then it's going to translate into the music, right? Because you don't want to
Right.
be there, then you're just kind of clicky shit, and you're just like whatever, blase. So I really make sure I'm like focused in on creating, and like I do a lot of meditation. So like before my sessions, I'll usually like meditate for like 20 minutes or something, just to like, get in alignment, get into like my vibe, like, you know what I mean?
Mm.
And, if I ever end up feeling like, oh, I don't really want to go, I'm not feeling it, I just like kind of flip the switch and just be like, okay, like one, I've committed to the session. Two, they trust me as a producer with my sound, so I have to I have to be thoughtful and like grateful that they're rocking with me, right? So I don't want to like just go into it with like, oh yeah, I'm the shit, like, you know what I mean? One, that's not who I am in the first place. So I want to make sure I'm creating like the best one environment to create, and two, the actual tangible song, right? Like I want to make sure I'm putting my best foot forward, because at the end of the day, you don't even know who they know, right? They might know crazy people, like they could get that song placed on a TV show, on, you know, Facebook show, or, you know, it's a placement with a label, so you don't know. So you got to just like go into it, you know, I'm gonna make the best shit I can today, and you know what I mean. We're gonna make the best songs that we can today, and just, you know, go into it with a positive mindset and come out of it with an even better mindset. You know.
Right. I'm gonna switch gears a little bit.
Sure.
Your favorite VSTs, and they can be both mixing and, you know, or the instruments, whatever rings true for you.
Yeah.
What are your favorite VSTs?
Yeah. I mean, I'm using Analog Lab, like the Arturia plugins, a lot. That's like, at least for my sample games. Also for like when I'm making melodies, I use like one shots like crazy. Like I use so many one shots. Like my homie AB, crazy one shots. Nami, crazy one. Coop the Truth.
Yeah.
Like all these guys like are going so crazy with the one shots. Oh, this other guy, XY Nothing.
Oh yeah.
Nasty one shots, nasty vibes. Like, so those sounds in itself just like inspire me to create the melodies, and like, you know, and then when they get their drums going, the drums shit, you know, rocking, it's like just another like inspirational refuel. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
One shots, those Arturia, what else? I'm using this plugin called Echo Melt, which is super fire. It's like a delay, like effects plugin.
Oh, what's it called?
Echo Melt.
Okay. I've never heard of it.
Yeah, it's dope. It's like, it's got like a chorus infused with like delays and reverbs and stuff. It gets super cool. Like crazy. So I'll send it to you after we're done.
For sure.
Get the vibes.
Yeah.
But yeah. Just like I use a lot of tape saturation plugins. I don't have like the Waves bundle, so I just kind of make do with like the Fab filter and like the stock plugins and stuff. But you know, it ends up coming out dope. I use the Murder Melodies plugin a lot by Steven.
Right. Yeah, I sleep on that. I keep forgetting I have that. It's a good one. It's actually really underrated.
It's super vibey and the sounds are sick. So yeah, for sure.
When you're, I've asked a few people about this, but I feel like maybe I'm not missing anything and it's just me overthinking it. But when you're using one shots, are you paying attention? Like, how would you go about using one shots? Is there a way that you're maybe processing them or like setting them up to be played? Or are you just kind of going with what's there? Like, how does that work for you?
I think honestly, for the most part, I end up just going with what's there, and I like just use an EQ to like take some of the high end or the low end off. But for the most part, the one shots are already processed. So I don't want to do like I don't want to over process it to where it doesn't sound like, you know, natural. Like I'm doing my best to create that natural sample feeling. You know, to at least my iteration of it, my version of what that would sound like. So, but yeah, no, I usually don't process it too much. If I do, I'll probably like consolidate, you know, the pattern into a waveform, and then I'll process it that way, you know, light EQs, and then, you know, and then I have like my master chain of effects or whatever, so extra EQs, and like I put there's another plugin I use called Satin by Yuhi. I don't know if you heard of it.
But it sounds so familiar. I'm sure I've seen it.
Yeah, you've definitely seen, you know, Zebra by Yuhi.
Yeah.
It's the same company, but this is like a tape saturation, so it's kind of like my J37, like, you know.
Oh, cool.
So, but yeah, so I use that a lot. You know, RC20, and like just to give it that. Isotope Vinyl is another one I use a lot. So now, they're all coming to me. So, but yeah, so it's I that's kind of like my chain and how I rock with the melody side of things, especially with the one shots.
No, for sure. Who do you go to when you're and maybe there isn't, like, I know some people, they just resort to kind of their own practices within themselves, but is there someone you go to when you're feeling lost? And it can be multiple people for multiple things. You might have someone for music, someone for life, whatever.
Sure.
But is there someone, or are there people, or are there practices that you get into if you're kind of feeling lost or not fully, aligned, I guess?
Yeah, definitely. And as I mentioned before, like I'm big on meditation. So like I've been like I meditate like before sessions. I meditate in the morning, like just to get my day started. Like I did it like a 20-25 minute one this morning, just to like lock in, especially if the days are tough. So like, and if the weeks are busy and packed, like I'm definitely more inclined to meditate because I know I'm about to get like, you know what I mean? About to get crazy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I definitely meditate. I like going on walks. I'm a big foodie. So like, I love to try new restaurants. So really like when I feel like I'm lost, I look towards experience and meditation to like kind of guide me out of that, just kind of let life, just like do its thing and like, just hang out with friends or, because if I'm feeling lost, it's more that I'm feeling uninspired. You know what I mean? Like, and that's just like on the music side of things and the life side of things. Like if I'm feeling lost, and I love like my parents are like my best friends. Like, they support me 150,000%. And like, they're like my, like I said, my best friends. So like, I'll come to them, like, my friends, like, just in general, my songwriting friends, like my boy Trey and my other boy CB, like all my homies, like my production homies, like AQ, like I will chop it up with AQ. We'll chop it up for like an hour before, you know what I mean? Before we like cook up sometimes, just kind of talking about life. And like, that just revs me up, amps me up just because like I choose to surround myself with people like, like-minded people and with high energy levels and positive mentalities.
For
And,
sure.
and that's key for me. You know what I mean? So it's key for me. And I think it should be key for everybody because you're a product of your environment. You know what I mean? And if you surround yourself with positive people, you'll be less likely to enter those slumps, those stages of life slumps, right? You'll be more equipped to handle it because you're like already programming yourself to like think in a particular way, in a positive way.
Yeah, no, that's so true, man. I've believed that for the longest time. And it's just so true. Like there's nothing really else to say about it, but myself included. Like I know it's true, and I'll still kind of like, for example, now if I'm feeling like I might fall into some sort of slump or whatever, like I'll go see some of my closest friends because I'm very particular with who I keep around me for the exact reason you mentioned.
You have to.
Exactly. And but yeah, like I'll go visit one of my basically my best friend. He's like a brother to me. And his outlook, and he's the same. Like we have very similar outlooks on life. But I will say he's not as prone to these slumps as I am. So for me, like I just go spend time with him, and it helps him too. Usually, we both kind of like-minded people. We don't necessarily even have to talk about it or talk at all. Like we could just be in the same room working, and just like being in that energy is already enough.
Right.
I'm curious because you're such a laid back guy. Like I don't want to say too laid back because I don't think that fully describes you, but you do have a very calm vibe to you. So I'm curious, have you ever, like, what would be something that someone could do in the music side of things? I mean, I guess other, but mainly music. What kind of characteristic could they have, or something they could do to make you not want to work with them?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I've had a couple instances where, where it just like the vibe was weird, it was off, you know what I mean? And then, they apologized and, we just kept it going, you know what I mean? But, I think when working with creatives in general, whether it be an artist or a producer, it's important to just give that space, right? Like I understand like giving feedback, constructive feedback and like, oh, like maybe you should add some of this or that. You know what I mean? Like that's I'm totally on board with constructive feedback, but I think just like giving the space to create, right? Just giving like some moment, whether 5 to 10 minutes, like, okay, then you start to like take the social cues, right? Like, oh, he might, it sound, he's been working on this part of the beat like
Yeah.
15 minutes, 20. So, maybe if I give him a little nudge here, like offer some, not advice, but like offer some idea that could,
Yeah.
make the beat progress, and, then for sure. But again, that's all like social cues, like being aware of your environment and just seeing like, is he stuck on it, or he's just testing out a couple ideas, experimenting with sounds, like trying some different vibes. You know what I mean? Every producer, creative in general, has their own process to create.
Right.
So I just, that's important to me. And like, even when I'm collaborating with producers, like, until I feel like there's a good enough rapport where I could be like, oh, can you move that, move that block like 2 spaces to the right? Like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to let them do their thing. And then when it's my turn to get up on deck, you know what I mean? Then I'll move stuff around or whatever I hear, you know what I mean? But I try and give the space to whichever creative for them to do their thing, so that they can just feel like, I'm in the zone. I want them to get in their flow state, because then I'm going to get in my flow state. I'm just an energy guy. Like, I love to I feed off of people's energy. And like, if the vibe is right, then, the song is going to come out hard regardless.
Right.
No. But yeah, dude.
So
crazy.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a real thing. When it comes to, this is something I basically ask every producer. There's 2 questions I have, actually. First one, before I forget, I'll just ask you, is there a piece of equipment besides your laptop that you really stand by? Like, you really, like, this is such an important part of your production process? I know for some people it might be a VST, but is there something that stands out for you on the equipment side of things, hardware side of things, that you really stand by?
Yeah, well, in terms of like making the sound, sound however I want it to sound, it's like my hard drive, dude. Like, I've been collecting my drum kits like since I first started producing. Like, it's only up until like the last couple of years where I've had to like delete older drum kits. I filter by date, modified or whatever. I go all the way down. Like, my hard drive is like pretty much full of drum kits. So I've had to like, thankfully my laptop is a 2 terabyte, and like it's split up between 1 terabyte hard drive, 1 terabyte SSD. So I just been moving my newer drum kits onto like the one, my SSD drive, just so I have extra space. But like, really, my hard drive is like my most important piece, just because it has all my sounds, or at least all the sounds that I use consistently. And then, I mean, the Focus right now, like my Scarlett is like my baby. So wherever I go, I usually have that, or somebody has that ready for me to go. And then, yeah, I'm trying to think plugins wise. I use a soft clipper. I've been using the what's it called? Solid State, the SSL G-Bus compressor.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I've been using that before the soft clipper, and there's like a preset, like some soft stereo punch preset, and it just makes it smack. Like, it just,
that's dope.
Yeah, it's just, you figure shit out like randomly, right? You just trying stuff out, like, oh, let me try this out. So, it worked out, and it was cool. So, I tailor it, every now and again, but it's those 2 for sure on the master.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Like, one of the talks that I had with Jackson Romaine. Do you know who Jackson is?
No, I haven't met him yet.
Oh, he's sick, man. You got to get it. He's in the UK, but just like, even like linking with him through Instagram, I'll link you guys. He's a great, definitely a guy that I think you'd vibe with.
Bless.
Yeah, he's great. He produced Met Gala with Wheezy for Gunna.
Oh, fine. Hell yeah.
And he's had other, I mean, he has obviously other placements and other accolades. He's fantastic. Yeah. But one of the things he did mention was like the idea of just like clicking things and just experimenting, just figuring things out that way. And that's really cool to me, because that's something I found for myself. There was a point in time where I kind of lost that. Like, I was so regimented in my production, and so like, this is, I need to get this done by then and this and that. And I stopped experimenting as much, and you could tell with the beats, like, there was sort of a stagnancy that happened with the beats. Like, they were all, it's not that they were bad. It was that they weren't there was like a good chunk of time where they weren't really improving. It was like just plateaued. And they all started to sound similar in terms of their mix and all that. And that's obviously everyone has their style. That's fine. Right. But experimenting is very key for a lot of reasons, for sure.
Absolutely. It keeps creative juices flowing, I think, like, especially when you're experimenting, you know, and then you find something that works and it's fire, and then you just want to use it all the time. And it's like, for sure.
Exactly.
You know, nice.
What advice would you give to someone like a producer? It could be anybody in the industry, but I would, you know, I think you probably have more experience under the realm of production. Starting out now, what kind of advice would you give them if you had to give them any advice?
Get a lawyer. Get a good lawyer. Find a good lawyer who's gonna fight for you, right? Like, it's crazy, but I'm like, I don't know if you follow T-Watt or you know T-Watt.
Yeah. I know T-Watt.
He's a super fire producer, but he actually just started one of those. Instagram is doing like these channel threads. I don't know if you've seen that before.
I haven't. I've seen them pop up. I haven't actually clicked on them. I don't even know what they fully entail right now.
It's basically like, it's kind of like Twitter Spaces. It's like Twitter Spaces. Okay. Like you could join like a community, but it's just one guy. So the guy who creates the channel is the only person that's talking, or at least that's how T-Watt has it set up. So he just kind of like drops in gems or throw in beat snippets. But one of them was talking about a lawyer, and I really took it to heart. He was talking about how some lawyers, especially if you're first doing research and you know, kind of like reading up on them, some lawyers are actually like, quote unquote, in bed with the label. So they're like more inclined to, when they're dealing with the label, to kind of have it sway on their end or have the deal points like more leaning in their favor. So you got to find somebody who's like non-biased, who has those relationships, but is focused on, you know, making money for their client, right? Because you make the client happy is more repeat business for the lawyer. So especially if the artist or producer takes off, you know, you want to be their guy. You know what I mean? So definitely looking for a lawyer that's going to have your best interests at heart. You know, finding collaborators to work with, like other producers on your level, right? Your level or better. So that way you know, the people on your level, you're coming up together, or if you're going, you know, working with other producers that have the experience, have that, you know, the hours logged in, and you're just looking, you know, to grow your skill set, get in with them. You know what I mean? Make sure you make yourself available for those sessions, even if it's just talking with them and just get, you know, developing a rapport with them, because you never know, like, the gems that they're going to drop on you, because you know they have the gems, you know what I mean? Because they've been in those situations before 1,000 times over, so they will know how to handle it. So yeah, I would say collaborating, lawyer, those are like the top two, I would say. And then the third one, I would just say, like, don't give up. That, you know, just don't give up. Like, there was one, I had a session at Ultrium up here, like, it must have been like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago now. But the guy was like, if there's one piece of advice I have to give you, it would be to not give up. The more you do it, the more you put yourself out there to meet people, to go to sessions, the higher likelihood that something is just going to click. You keep doing it, something is going to click. So that's what he told me. I'm like, yo, like, that makes sense to me. Like, I feel like I've met so many people, you know, I've gotten some placements here, and like, you know, it wouldn't have happened had I just decided to give up and like, just, you know, do it something else. You know what I mean? But, you know, I feel like I'm grateful and blessed enough to know what my purpose is in life. So, you know, that fuels me to just keep going. You know what I mean? So I think that should fuel anybody else. There's really a meme that kind of like, I always remember. You've probably seen it on Instagram.
Oh, I think I already know which one you're gonna.
The pickaxe one, when they're underground and like the one guy is like, he's turning around, but the other guy's about to hit the diamond. I'm like, yo, that's like all I think about when I feel like I want to quit. I'm just like, I know, like, I'm right there. You know what I mean? but
Yeah.
we're all like right there. So it's just a matter of just keeping it going and just like, keep moving forward, dude. That's all you can do.
Is there anything in particular that you wanted to touch on that I haven't yet, or just you wanted to talk about and touch on?
Um, no, I mean, honestly, like I was actually gonna kind of like offer like we already covered it, like the 2-3 points of advice for like, up and coming guys.
For sure.
Honestly, I feel like we covered a lot, and like I feel like my story is still being written. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Just like a lot of other people. So, um, I just want to make sure that I'm like doing everything, and I think we all are in the same space. Like I think we all are doing our best to make sure like we're navigating this landscape that is the music industry and like the best possible light, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
there's so much like shadiness that happens. I'm sure you've seen it, about it,
Mm-hmm.
you've heard about it, we've all heard about it and seen it. But it's kind of crazy to see how people can still try and like get one over on each other, especially in the producer community, which I'm sure you've seen like on Twitter and like, what I mean, beefs and this and that.
Yeah, it's
um,
crazy.
so I think we just got to make sure that we're kind of like starting or being at the forefront of change when it comes to like, working and collaborating, right? Like everybody has their circles, right? But it seems like people are a little bit skeptical to work with people outside of that circle unless they're vouched for, right? So there's like a lot of like apprehensiveness when it comes to collaborations unless, there's a backing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think, if we're able to kind of like mitigate and minimize the amount of fear of like, you know, potential business going bad, right? Like, because that's why people are like so apprehensive to work with others that aren't in their camp, right? Because they're
Yeah.
afraid the business will get messed up or like, make it difficult and this and that. So I think just everybody, I just feel needs to have like pure intentions, more pure intentions, right? And I know a lot of people, a lot of creatives, a lot of artists and producers with pure intentions, and like I just think if we all kind of like are on that same plane, things will be a lot smoother. Businesses will get done smoother, quicker,
Yeah.
and the actual creations of the music will sound way better. I mean, not that it doesn't sound good now, but like I just feel like that it'll inspire better music because the business will be so smooth, and it's like you can just create and not have to think about, what I mean, is going to get taken down, is, they'll have to fight for more points, so am I not even getting enough, is this like a fair share for what I've created, right? So it's just, that's all I have to say really, is
Yeah.
just being at the forefront and like showing people how to do business correctly, showing people,
Yeah.
you know, that pure intentions and a pure of heart is like really the best way to move, because that's how you're going to get continued business. You're going to have more artists reach out to you like that because they know your vibe is, you're passing the vibe check. You're really letting them you're showing them that you have like, you're able to set up and cultivate a comfortable work environment, creative environment, and just like all encompassing experience, you know.
Yeah, man, that's so true. It's something that like I have so many various thoughts on that. Like the producer community, especially because I've seen all the negativity that can fester in the community, and then also I've seen a ton of positivity. But I'm like I don't know fully how to always view it. I'm like I wonder if it is something specific to the producer community that we can fall into those spirals of negativity and like feed into that and feed off it,
Mm-hmm.
or whether it's in every industry and we just happen to think like, oh, it's just only with the producers.
Right.
That said, what I can say is there's a few things. One, I first of all, obviously I agree. I think one thing that I've started to see more of that I wish, or I hope, I don't think it'll be the case for too long, but I think there's producers that need to be aware of it, is that some producers will get wronged like once or twice, and they'll develop such a negative view of the entire industry,
Mm-hmm.
and that holds them back from a bunch of other opportunities that can come their way or have come their way,
Right.
because they're so into that negative headspace. They don't trust people. They don't, and I get it to an extent for sure.
Yeah.
But it is definitely important to not let those dictate your entire view of the industry and your moves and actions moving forward.
Right.
Because some of these guys are super talented and they could, right? They could be around such a beautiful, positive environment. They could. It's definitely possible. And another thing I also see is, I mean, don't get me wrong, there is a lot of weird, shady stuff that goes on in the music industry for sure. Right. There's one thing I've also noticed is that sometimes, especially newer artists and producers, they'll have a situation they perceive as negative. And then when I talk to them about it, I realize, oh, they just didn't like communicate with whoever they've had an issue with. And it's sometimes as simple as like, okay, they might have some differences, but if you guys just work on, because I don't know, I maybe it is a music thing, but we can get into our own heads and like not necessarily communicate. When in reality, if they just spent the time like communicating with whoever they were having an issue with, that issue could be resolved. And sometimes it could elevate both of those people because they didn't, know something or whatever. And then they're like, oh, wait, it was about this. Oh, my bad, bro. Right. Like, I didn't mean anything by this, know?
Yeah.
I used to have it where, and I knew this would potentially come up because I'm big on constructive criticism, as you'd mentioned. And so when I'm developing an artist, if they're relatively new, I am, and I tell them, I warn them ahead of time when I'm, being constructive or that I do have this in me where if we're in a session and I don't like, I think you can do better or there's stuff to be improved upon, I will always tell you. So don't take it any other way. And if there is an issue, talk to me. And it is something that I have to be the one usually to like, make sure they're good, make sure like, okay, and then sometimes I'll realize some time down the line that we'll communicate. And it's so important to communicate. You talked about spending like an hour before your session with AQ, sometimes just chopping it up. Having that communication there as early as possible is so key. And so, I'll realize like, oh, this artist had an issue with some feedback I gave, him about this one song. And then we'll just chop it up. And then at the end of it, we'll most of it, like 99% of the time, realize, oh, I didn't mean anything by it. And they realize the feedback was actually really valuable. Or if they didn't agree with it, we can go another direction, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and even now, like I see there's a guy that I used to work with. He's moved to Toronto now, and he's now working with a new team. And we chopped it up on the phone. We had a miscommunication. We chopped that up, and then at the end of it, we spent the rest of the call. He was telling me about, I've been having issues with these people, and I don't know what to do because I'm getting really frustrated. So I talked to him about it, and then by the end of it, we realized, oh, like he has all these issues, but he hasn't fully communicated with these people what the issues are. And so I just told him, bro, like, I see you. I honestly think the solution is just talking to these people because no one in this situation, as you've told me, has any bad intentions. Like, you guys are all about making the best music. You just have different views of what that looks like. Right. There's definitely a solution that can be found. Now, that said, obviously there are people with bad intentions, and be very, very careful, especially when it comes to signing deals. I've made the mistake of putting my signature on something that I really thought at the time was a good sign. And I'd had other people tell me that it was good. So that was kind of what solidified it, is that people I trusted told, but that did, I did make the wrong decision. So it happens for sure.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, those are my 2 cents on that.
Hey man, it's all about experience, right? You don't know what's good for you, right? Until you go through it, right? Like, oh, you going through that experience, being signed, I'm sure, it was very difficult, but I'm sure you also grabbed a ton of gems from it that you're for sure applying, moving forward. So, at the end of the day, it's just really kind of like going through life and like learning as much as you can from the experiences that, present themselves to you, because, what's the definition of insanity is continuing to do something with the expectation that it's going to change, right? So like you can't move through life without changing, because that's insane. And like, you can't apply the same thing to every situation, you know what I mean? So yeah, no, it's it's a tough industry, but you find the right lawyer, you find the right people, around you to help elevate you, keep the right mindset, you can go far, man. Talent is only part of it, right? There are so many producers in this game. I'm sure you hear all the time, and the beats, they're cool, but they're getting placements, and you're like, yo, I'm making basically the same shit with my flair on it. You know what I mean? What's up? So it's just, just keep going, keep your head down, and just, stay focused, stay true to yourself, your sound, just don't let anybody waver you, really.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
For real.
Well, it was a pleasure. I really appreciate it, man. Honestly,
thank you, bro.
I'm looking forward to, of course, yeah. I'm looking forward to what you and Q are dropping tomorrow. It is your production, right?
Yeah. I produced it with my guys Ty Jake and then Tyler Genius as well. So.
Oh, sweet. Yeah. That's a dope team right there.
Yeah,
that's a good.
No, it should be dope. So coming out tomorrow, the whole 9 AQ. He's spazzing, so we definitely got some shit on the way.
Awesome, man. Yeah, that's all I have to say, man. Thank you again. If there's something else you have to say, say it now. I'll plug your links in the description and everything.
Bless, man. No, yeah, thank you so much for having me on your show, and just taking the time to speak with me about my journey, my 2 cents. So yeah, no, it's a blessing, man. I'm honored to be here, for sure. Thank you.
Absolutely, man.